Full shout out here to a subscriber for suggesting today's video, and since the funny baseball names video was such a hit, I figured, hey, why not? It seems the internet loves hilarious athlete names, and the history of hockey is full of gems. There's a saying, which is that all hockey players are bilingual, they speak English and profanity. Well, that just about sums up today's list, so let's skate into it. Number 10, Cory Pecker. I am so sad that Cory Pecker never made it to the NHL. I feel like we all lost something because of that. It's actually kind of crazy that he didn't make the NHL because honestly, he was a pretty good player in minor hockey. He was the player of the year in the OHL in 2002, despite missing a bunch of weeks with a broken arm. So the Pecker was missing the use of his arm for a while there. There's a joke. I'm not going to make it. Sadly, that success in the OHL just didn't translate to the higher levels as he just bounced around the AHL from there, really, never quite putting it together. But he can take comfort as the history of the NHL is written, as hockey evolves, this Pecker will have a place in it. Number 9, Alexander Semin. That's pronounced Semin, please, but you would be forgiven for thinking otherwise. Many people did. Most Russian names are pretty straightforward, but this one definitely threw some NHL announcers a curveball, that is for sure. So to say this guy had an up and down NHL career would be an understatement. In the end, he had 517 points in 650 NHL games, including 239 goals. So he was no slouch, but that career had some drama along the way. During the 2004-2005 lockout, he was suspended by the Washington Capitals for refusing to report to their AHL affiliate team, as he instead chose to play in Russia. Then when NHL play resumed the next year, he was not allowed to return to the NHL because he was required to fulfill 2 years of military service in Russia. His young teammate in Washington at that time, Alexander Ovechkin, didn't have to do that. Some shadiness in Russia, I can't believe it. Lawyers got involved, courts got involved, but obviously it was all eventually settled, and he got on with a decent NHL career. And for us fans of funny names, we're eternally grateful. Number 8, Radek Bonk. Terrific name. It's all about the bonk for me. And for those of you who can recall this guy, you will remember that he was much more than just a funny sounding name. He was an absolute can't miss prospect when he lit up the IHL as a 17-year-old, so much so that he was taken 3rd overall by the Ottawa Senators in the 1994 NHL entry draft. He had a decently long NHL career. He played in nearly 1,000 games, but he only put up 194 goals and 497 points over that time, which was definitely below what was expected of him coming into the league. Turns out in retirement, he lives in Ottawa with his family, and he still plays rec hockey. Can you imagine showing up for a beer league shinny game and this dude shows up? Even in his late 40s, I'm sure he is still dominating. Number 7, Zarley Zalapski. Let's play a fun game. Given that his name is Zarley Zalapski, where would you say this guy was born, huh? Poland? Czech Republic? Maybe Slovakia? Well, bonus points to you if you guessed Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I don't mean to stereotype, but I did not see that coming. His first name comes from his dad, who is a major golf enthusiast, and he named him after professional golfer Kermit Zarley, which is a horrendous name already. Now I definitely have to do a top 10 golfer name video. Ugh. I suppose that's the best result, really, naming him Zarley, because he could have named him Kermit, which would have also landed him on this list. In 637 games, he tallied 384 points, which isn't bad for a defenseman, but sadly his life was cut short as he died of a viral infection at just 49 years old in 2017. Interestingly, and also sadly, his sister had his brain tested after he died and it was found he had some pretty serious CTE, which I'm afraid is not uncommon with hockey players. Take care of yourself, boys, please. Number 6, Miroslav Satan. Now, thankfully, his last name is pronounced Satan, not Satan, but on paper, this one is just not ideal. That being said, I'm going to put my foot down and say that Miroslav Satan had probably the best NHL career of anyone on this list. He played 15 seasons in the NHL, not to mention another 8 seasons overseas. And during his time in the show, he put up 363 goals, not too shabby at all. He was even named to the All-Star game twice. In international play, he won gold for his native Slovakia in 2002 at the World Championships, and he was on the Olympic team multiple times, so wowzers. Finally, he won the Stanley Cup with the Penguins in 2009. No deals with the devil required, for this man was Satan himself. Well done, you have stick-handled your way to the midpoint. Thanks for hanging around. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you don't mind. Otherwise, you might miss some hilarious golf names now. or maybe volleyball names or chess names. I don't know what sports I'm going to stop at. And you don't want that, do you? Number 5, Bob Beers. Yes, maybe the best name in hockey history. Beers goes with hockey like beers go with hockey, right? Nothing better than downing a few bevies with the boys in the room post-game. Mr. Beers, yes, I will refer to him as Mr. He deserves it. He played D1 hockey at the University of Maine before being drafted in the 5th round of the 1985 NHL entry draft by the Boston Bruins. He was a decent defenseman who bounced around 4 teams over his career, played in 258 NHL games. He was also good enough to play in 3 World Championships representing the United States, not too shabby. Post-retirement, he's gone into broadcasting, and you New Englanders watching can catch him on 98.5 the Sports Hub Bruins radio network. Tune in and have a beer with Beers. Number 4, Daren Puppa. What do Alan Thicke, Dick Duff, and Daren Puppa have in common, you ask? 2 things. They're all from Kirkland Lake, Ontario, and they all have awesome names. But first, let's zoom in on the Poops, okay? Daren, that's Daren with 1 R, thank you very much. He was a pretty solid goalie for 429 games in the NHL, winning 179 of them and posting 19 shutouts. He won the NCAA championship too in 1985, that's cool. He won the Calder Cup in 1987, and he was a multi-time Vezina finalist as the NHL's best goalie. Unfortunately, his career was cut well short as he developed some pretty serious chronic back issues, and he hardly played during the last 5 years of his career. He's one of those guys who I can't help but imagine how good he could have been if not for his health. But he's still got an awesome name and a great career, and if you happen to be looking for a house in the Tampa, Florida area, it seems he's a real estate agent down there now, so check him out. Free plug for you, Poops. Number 3, Luca Cunti. Such an unfortunate last name. Like, obviously it's not fair to chirp international names through an English-speaking lens, but come on, you have to admit this one is rough. I can't say whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, but he never made it to the NHL, and he really didn't do much in North American hockey, full stop. So it's probably best that he avoided this less enlightened English-speaking nations of the world. He spent the vast majority of his career in his native Switzerland, playing for a few different teams in a career that is actually still going, at least on paper, as he's only 34 years old. And don't go dissing him too hard, as in addition to that long hockey career, he's played in 2 World Junior Championships, 2 World Championships, winning a silver in 1, and an Olympic Games. That is a great career to go with a not so great name. I respect it. Number 2, Ron Tugnutt. Old Tugger, gotta love him. After Miroslav Satan, he probably had the second best career of anyone on this list. He won 186 games in the NHL, he played in 2 World Championships for his native Canada, and he holds a couple of interesting records. First, he is the modern-day record holder for most saves in a regular season game in a non-loss. He stopped 70 of 73 shots in a game against the Bruins in 1991. Cool record. Second, he is the only goaltender in NHL history to have first ever wins for 2 different expansion teams, as he had the first win for the Anaheim Ducks and the first win for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Very cool. Are you still not impressed? Well, after he retired, in addition to being a goaltending coach as well as a color commentator for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, he also owned a Junior A ice hockey team, the Kemptville 73s, until he sold them in 2017. And if you still don't like him after all that, you can tug these nuts. Number 1, Harry Dick. How could anyone or anything else be placed at number 1? This one sounds made up, but I assure you, Harry Dick is not. Even though his hockey career spanned roughly 16 years from 1939 to 1955, Harry Dick played just 12 games in the NHL. 12 games, that's it. All for the Chicago Blackhawks and all in the 1946-47 season. Just 12 games, so sad. And even worse is that he never scored a goal. Can you believe that? How badly would you have wanted to heard the announcers call on a goal by Harry Dick? I would love that. He was a defenseman and a thick, strong dude at that. He stood 5'11", weighed 210 pounds, and after his playing days were over, he was in the highway construction business and he worked in youth hockey in Kansas, which is probably a good thing because there's not much hockey going on out in Kansas. I'm sure they could have used his help. He died in 2002 at the age of 82, but if you find yourself in Chicago, outside the entrance to the United Center where the NHL's Blackhawks play, there is a statue, and on that statue, along with the names of many other players, is the name Harry Dick. it means that Harry Dick will always be right there at the entrance. And if that doesn't sum it up perfectly, I don't know what else will. Wow, hockey sure has had a colorful history of amazing names. Wouldn't you agree? What did you think of today's list? Did I miss any good ones? I know I did on the baseball video. I'm sure I did again on the hockey one. So let me know in the comments below. Let's get pucked.